call to order the August 11th Port Orchard City Council regular meeting, and pursuant to the governor's stay home, stay safe order, the city council continues to meet via Zoom to help stop the spread of COVID. We have provided call-in numbers for the public to observe or to call in and listen via a telephone number. So those mediums have been provided to the public to participate in tonight's meeting. So we have, at this time, I'd like to ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have a published agenda. Are there any proposed amendments to this evening's agenda? Not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Go ahead, Jay.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Rosa Pepe, a second by Councilmember Lucarelli to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion of this evening's agenda? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? The agenda has been set for this evening. We're to our first citizen comment period, which is for anything that is on this evening's agenda. Citizens will be allowed to comment for 3 minutes. And if you wish to be acknowledged, please use the raise your hand feature and the clerk will acknowledge you and allow you to provide comment to the city council.
At this time, Mayor, I do not see any members of the public wishing to comment.
Okay. I will close the first citizen comment period. There's a second one at the end of the meeting for any matters a citizen wishes to address us about. So with that, we are to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
I move we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
A motion by Council Member Lucarelli, a second by Council Member Cacciardi to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion of the consent items? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none, the consent items have been approved. We have one presentation this evening. It is our 2020 crime stats, and Chief Brown is here with us this evening, and I think there is a PowerPoint presentation. So Janine, are you bringing that up? I'm going to share that PowerPoint.
Okay, yep, just give me a moment and I will grab it.
All right, and I'm looking forward to sharing this with everybody. I apologize, Janina and I did not have a chance to practice, so we'll fumble with this as best we can. And while we're waiting on that, I wanted to share with everybody, we had our on-site for accreditation last week and we passed. It was described as one of the cleanest accreditations that they've seen. It is not official yet. That won't be till November when we go in front of the board and have that conferred. But everybody here should be incredibly proud of the men and women downstairs. This has everything to do with them and their willingness to make some changes and really put in the hard work. And I cannot be prouder of every single one of them downstairs. So, and you should be as well.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
You might want to go into slideshow mode, Janine. There we go. All right.
Okay.
Take it away, Chief.
Thank you, sir. So this is the 2020 stats. We're gonna talk about what we've done, and again, a lot of this we have to consider was a COVID year. So if we want to go to the next slide, I'll talk about the statistics that we're going to have. So if you can just click all the way through these, Janine, that would be great. So a crime is defined as going to be anything punishable by possible incarceration. And the data is collected via our report management system. So it's not just the CAD, but they actually have to write a report. We may adjust or correct any of that data through our administrative services. Some of the information that comes in, you may just have to click a different tab or redefine it. So that's corrected through admin services. And then that is reported through the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. They compile all of that data and then they provide the report. Part of the reason that it was delayed is because of COVID. Normally we get this data back by mid-May. It was delayed until the end of June. Next click. And NIBRS is the National Incident-Based Reporting System, and that's the data that is collected and sent to the to the FBI. And this is the information that you all will be seeing. So it does not encompass all crimes, but they're separated into Group A and Group B. And Group A are crimes against persons, crimes against property, and crimes against society. And Group B tends to be proactive crimes, and we'll explain a little bit more of those as we go forward. So these are Group A offenses. They're spread out just so you can kind of understand what they are. But you've got your vandalism, malicious mischief. You've got human trafficking, motor vehicle theft, drugs and gambling and robbery, and all the other things that we would consider to be more major offenses. So again, as we discussed, crimes against persons, property, or society, and Group B offenses, those are ones that are listed as arrested. The reported crimes, because they're in Group A, we tabulate all of those. So this is kind of the statewide profile. So crime is up about 7%. Crimes against persons are down. The assumption is that because of COVID and a lot more people were inside their homes and not allowed to be out, that's why that went down. But crimes against property are up significantly, about 14%. A lot of that is also assumed to be because of COVID, where there are businesses that were closed and made them prime targets. And also with people losing employment, there was a little bit of an understanding that may be related to people who are trying to obtain resources. Crimes against society down about 3.6%. Again, statewide, and the assumption is that is because of COVID and people were locked down a little bit more. Statewide, Group A offenses were cleared by arrest or exceptional about 23% of the time. Exceptional would be we know who he is, we know where he is, and there's not a reason for us to arrest him because he's already serving a 20-year term in Walla Walla. We're going to go ahead and close that case out. Our homicide rate has increased significantly, but again, statewide, not in Port Orchard, but we're up almost 50% in 2020. And there's a lot of factors in looking at some of the data. There's not a very good understanding of why that may be. So we're just reporting that as a fact of what's going on. We're also up about 6% for assaults on officers. We did lose 2 officers last year. As we've all kind of seen, there is an increase in violence just in general across our community. A lot of that has to do with just general frustrations, and we also recognize that there's a lot of polarization going on. So we're going to be looking to see if this is a continuing trend. So as part of the information that we get back from WASPIC, I've broken it out so it's a little bit easier to digest. So this is the Group A crimes against persons. Realistically, when you look at these, some of these numbers may be a little bit dramatic. Our rape crimes have gone up 33%. But again, we have to look, is that a statistically significant number? And why that is certainly a tragic crime going from 6 to 8. At this point, we're not concerned that there is a trend. It's just that because we had low numbers, any increase in numbers is going to make that look dramatic. So crimes against property, this has been our biggest increase. Before I talk about burglary and motor vehicle theft, what I want to point out is, so our fraud offenses have jumped about 130%. The reason that I don't feel that is significant is we had, again, tied to COVID, there was a large number of fraud cases related to unemployment claims, which brought our total up significantly. So if we were to mitigate for that specific fraud with the unemployment, I do not believe that we would be anywhere close to this. We did not have the opportunity to go back and mitigate for that. So I just wanted to bring you the raw numbers. but I don't believe that's an issue. What I can tell you is that burglary and motor vehicle theft, those are consistent numbers. We did have a lot more stolen cars. We did have a lot more burglaries, and we do believe that is related to the lockdowns and unoccupied businesses. There was a string of motor vehicle thefts from one of our local car dealerships that also brought that number up. And then finally, crimes against society. This number is significant when it comes to narcotics violations and drug equipment violations. A lot of this has to do last year, not necessarily with the Blake decision, which was a decision in the Supreme Court that voided and stated that our possession law was unconstitutional. But a lot of this has to do, because of COVID, we asked our officers not to be proactive. Not that they weren't going to go out and search for crime, but to be very, very careful and really only do things that were affecting public and life safety, with the goal of making sure that we remained operational and that we didn't have people sick. And we were successful in that. So this is our Group A crime trend, going back to 2012, which I believe is the last year that this was reported to council. So we've been going down in our Group A crimes. What's interesting, however, is there was a significant drop between 2018 and 2019, and we're continuing to look into that to see what caused that significant drop. But we actually had quite a large increase, even if we factored out the fraud crimes in 2020 for that jump. So we're going to continue to look into that and try and determine what's starting to bring that trend back up. This is our state. This is our profile compared to state. Our persons crimes are about 7% higher than across the state. And we do recognize that we do have a little bit more violent crime, but we have been working to address that. And our property crimes, again, statewide, it's about 74%. We're a little bit low on that, but that's because of the other number related to persons crimes. So we're still relatively consistent with the statewide model. And then it's also important for us to talk about our crime rate per thousand. So without getting into a lot of how that algorithm works, I'll tell you that our crime rate for Group A offenses per thousand is about 86.9. So about 87 Group A offenses per thousand. So that's up from 2019. Again, it's very interesting to observe that when we went from a non-lockdown year to a lockdown year, and recognizing that those crimes have gone up, even when we mitigate for the fraud. Statewide, it's about 65.3. It's also up from 2019. We believe it's related to the general fraud crimes. And then Kitsap County is also up, but the average across all agencies is about 62 Group A offenses per thousand, and that's up from 2019. So this is how we compare with the other agencies, the other state agencies when we exclude for tribes. This is the first year, I believe, that we have actually been lower than Bremerton. On average, we have been higher than Bremerton for our crime rate. But we also have to consider that Bremerton has a narcotics unit and a PROAC unit, so they do a little bit different type of policing than we do. So those are some telling statistics there as well. And this, as we said, the state average is about 65 per thousand. So the case clearance rate, so this is where we talked about it a little bit earlier. So we're actually above the state clearance rate, which we're pretty excited about. So we are at about 24% of our cases are cleared, and that is, so for those Group A offenses, we're making an arrest or clearing exceptionally about 24% of the time, which is actually higher than the state average. And we are going to go back and take a look at some of the cases because we believe there are some that just were incorrectly coded. So our bet and our belief is that we are at a even higher case clearance rate than what is presented right now. So these are the Group B offenses. Again, a lot of this is proactive. So DUI, we don't really do any curfew violations, but again, a lot of these are FBI, NIBRS numbers. But these are activities that we are identifying by being proactive and being out there And then some of the other minor things like trespassing and, passing some bad checks. But they're more minor offenses that we can address. This is also another interesting statistic. So even with the opioid crisis, we are still about half of all the narcotics that we are seizing in the field remain methamphetamine. It's interesting to kind of look at that dichotomy because we recognize how many times our officers have had to use Narcan, even just in the last 18 months, while seeing that we're taking a tremendous amount of methamphetamine off the streets for a town our size. We did recover quite a bit of stolen property, and that includes those vehicles that we've been able to recover. So about $320,000 in stolen property was recovered by our department last year. Our DUIs are a little bit down, but the bars were closed, and again, without being able to identify a public safety risk, our traffic stops were down. And then this was also another interesting visual. So we tracked our calls for service by month beginning in January, so prior to the lockdown. And you can see the effect of the lockdown almost immediately at the end of February as we started dropping off. And then started coming back up towards the end of summer. And then in October, there's a big dip. And the reason that happened is that we had a long-standing practice where we would use what's called a patrol check, and we would generate a call for service. And we looked at what we were doing, and that patrol check would even include, I'm just driving through this neighborhood. Those are things that we expect anyway out of our officers, and we recognize that was increasing our costs through Kitsap 911. So unless they were getting out of their car and they were going and checking doors on a business, or they're doing a walkthrough of a park, we said, hey, we don't need to call out on you just driving around town. So we dropped that, and that brought our calls for service down. Additionally, we also recognized that when we were confirming a warrant for an agency that picked up one of our warrants from our court, we were pulling a case number, and that wasn't necessary. So that also brought that down. So that dropped us about 400 calls per month that we didn't need to be doing. So if you continue on that red trend line, you'll notice that as we're continuing to go up, even if we accept that we're still a little bit lower, we're almost by July of this year back to the same levels that we were at prior to the COVID lockdowns. So that trend is continuing to go up. Again, just a takeaway from this, our crime rate is up about 7.4%. That's on par with what the state is doing, but a lot of that is related to that unemployment fraud. Our on-view arrests are down. That was because of COVID, and we said, hey, look, we want to make sure our people are safe. We want to make sure we can continue to staff, and we want to keep our staff safe. Unless there's a public safety risk, we're going to reduce the amount of time that we are going to be doing traffic stops or going and investigating people that are possibly suspicious. Property crimes, again, remain our most common, and we've seen the increase in the burglaries and the vehicle thefts. And again, all credit to everybody down on your first floor. We work really, really, really hard on clearing those cases. We don't know what the impact is going to be of this new legislation, but you can rest assured that we're keeping that data, and that we'll make sure that we have a good presentation for you next year as well. So very, very brief year in review, but if you have any questions, I'm more than willing to answer.
Questions for the chief? Go ahead, Jay.
I hate to be a negative, but it sounds like 4 out of 5 times, if I'm a criminal, I'm not going to get caught. Since we're clearing about 20%, 22%, is there a different way of looking at it that would leave me with a more positive feeling?
Well, what I would tell you is that actually, so we're at about 24%. So we are actually, that's fairly high for a clearance rate. If you look at a lot of the property crime that we investigate, it would be, I was on vacation for a week, and when I came back, my garage was open and I'm missing my lawnmower. So you have a burglary, but you have no suspect information, you have no serial number, and you have no idea when it occurred. And those are incredibly hard to solve.
Thanks.
Other questions for the chief? Well, it's been too long since we've gotten this type of report or data, and I look forward to making this an annual process that our chief presents this data to the city council and to our community. And this is something that we're going to post on our website.
I had
Yes.
one more question. Mayor.
Yeah.
How, without asking for specifics, how's the first 6 months looking right now, just anecdotally, Chief?
With the crime rate or with calls for service or with clearance?
Any of them.
Any of them?
So we don't have the data for the crime rate or the clearance. Again, what we do is we compile that raw data and we provide it to our state organization, and they put it all together. And it gets more complex when you have what are called NIBRS errors, where you believe you're submitting it correctly and then it gets kicked back. So that's why it's an annual thing, but I can certainly get you more data if we can lock it down for you. I can tell you that the calls for service are back up to about the level prior to the lockdown last year. And also what everyone should look forward to. So our annual report, now that we have this information, we should probably be publishing that to you within the next couple of weeks. And this will capture all of that from when I got here in 2019.
Thank you.
Other questions for the chief? Okay, chief, we'll see you tomorrow.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is a continuation of a public hearing and potential adoption of a resolution approving and adopting the 2021 to 2030 water use efficiency goals and performance measures. Mr. Dorsey, do you have a staff report related to this?
Yes, it's basically the staff report I read in at the last meeting. In 2003, the Washington State Legislature passed engrossed second substitute House Bill 1338, better known as the Municipal Water Law, to address the increasing demand on the state's water resources. The law established that all municipal water suppliers must use water more efficiently in exchange for water right certainty and the flexibility to meet future demand. The legislature passed requirements within the Washington Administrative Code 246-290 and directed the Department of Health to adopt an enforceable water use efficiency program, which became effective in January of 2007. Consistent with this law, the city must set a water use efficiency goal and measure progress each year towards meeting the goal. The goal must include a measurable outcome, address water supply characteristics, and include an implementation schedule. The city must also evaluate or implement water efficiency measures to help meet the goal. By resolution number 049-21, the city would set a water use efficiency goal of reducing the per capita water use by 0.5% annually over the next 10 years. Staff recommends holding the public hearing, the continuation, and also if the clerk could bring in our utility manager, Jackie Brown, to be able to answer questions.
Okay. Probably premature on that. We're going to take testimony right now from the public, close the public hearing, and then we're going to go to an executive session, and then we'll be going to the business items where it could be appropriate to elevate Jackie at that point. So
okay, I didn't know there was I just thought we were going right to 7A. So okay.
With that, this is continuation, so the public hearing has remained open from our last meeting. So if you wish to provide comment on the water use efficiency goals and performance measures, please raise your hand and the clerk will acknowledge you and allow you to testify on this matter.
I do have one member of the public that wishes to testify,
Okay.
and I will allow them to talk now.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, my name is Mr. Long. I have a residence near Mile Drive. I just want to touch bases on maybe the presentation prior. Could we speak on that in the future before I touch on this subject?
This is only a public hearing related to the water use efficiency.
I know, I realize that, but I'm asking a question prior, because it's very important for the public to know those crime statistics. Okay, but I'm just saying, can the council?
There's a public comment period at the end of the council meeting where that would be appropriate if you want to provide comment on the crime statistics. This is a public hearing related to the water use efficiency plan.
Okay, so with the water use, what is the statistics and figures in economic fiscal for the 2021 to 2022? That is my question.
Okay, that information is in the packet that was published. But this isn't a questions and answers. This is your opportunity to provide testimony. Do you wish to provide comment on the plan? Accept that as no. And is there anyone else wishing to address the council on and provide testimony on the water use efficiency plan?
I see no other members of the public raising their hand to testify.
Okay, and if you could remove Mr. Long from the council meeting. And at this time, we will be going into a 10-minute executive session pursuant to RCW 4230-1101I to discuss legal risk of a proposed action that the city has identified and where there's potential adverse legal and financial consequences to the city. So council members, you were provided a link. So you're going to leave this meeting, go on that link for the executive session, and it'll be myself, the city attorney, and the 6 council members. And then we will come back to this meeting.